Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest newsletter breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Michael LoPiano, and yet still, Tank Top Week is back. That is the name of the game here. Earnings, very solid. We did get that pretty big EPS beat, I should say, that we were looking for. Yeah, but what are we to make of all of this after hours and pre-market activity here on GameStop? We're going to take a look at how the options market is orienting itself towards these events and what we might expect going forward coming out of earnings here. We will, of course, have a much deeper breakdown of what occurred during our earnings report. We can go through that on our live stream this week, happening at 4 p.m. Eastern time every week. So looking forward to talking about this with you guys. But yeah, let's get into our data for today. Before we do, of course, we have to go ahead and stop by our gratitude. And today's gratitude goes out to Jennifer Niles once again for sponsoring today's article and video breakdown, as well as to Not Medical Advice, Kurt Lusko, Cosmotropic, Deswag52, and Hey Luckies, aka Faithless Looter, for helping offset some of my data expenses on a monthly basis. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and hop into this here. First quarter results, obviously very good. A 300 EPS beat. That's actually an even better beat in terms of EPS than we had for quarter four. We did that, and we launched immediately afterwards by, I think upwards of about 4. Over to our charts. We love our charts. Right. So we did this move last time we had that EPS bet. Let's dig in a little bit. Let's hop down to that 4-hour timeline there. That should be able to give us some of our after hours action there. That should be this right here. So if I'm not mistaken, we did trade down on that earnings report as well. Let's see. Yeah, so earnings were reported on the 20. Did we start moving up immediately after hours? I suppose we did. We did actually start moving up immediately. And then we opened at around, this is different. Oh, yeah, no. We opened somewhere at around, 28.80, I think. We shot up to 29, I guess pre-market. Yeah, during the day, we had hit a pre-market high in the 29.80s, 29.85. Intraday high was 29.75. And then we moved down to close the day at 28.25-ish, before then immediately shooting down as soon as we got the announcement of the convertible bond offering. So little different approach, I should say. Reaction to the earnings report, despite the fact that the company performed extremely well. What I think, right, folks may be a little disappointed at, or what maybe even Wall Street may even be somewhat frustrated at, is that some of those points that we've been talking about this week, as far as what we were expecting to see in terms of the Bitcoin acquisition. This was a major point for Wall Street that I suspect Wall Street is somewhat frustrated regarding. We did not get an acquisition price on Bitcoin. The implication, we know this because it was one of the first things actually that came out in the news reports, was GME acquired Bitcoin sometime between May 3rd and June 10th. Right, that was like an immediate thing that came out as soon as earnings came out. So analysts immediately went through the earnings report and went Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. There's no Bitcoin on the quarterly filing, so we know they acquired it sometime after May 3rd. Very interesting point there. What that means is Ryan Cohen, it's suggested, right, that Ryan Cohen did not acquire Bitcoin, certainly at no point below its valuation at around minimum of kind of 92,000, I think, is the least price he could have acquired it at. Very interesting now that GameStop actually has no marketable securities. I wonder to what extent cash equivalents might count for that, but very interesting to see that. Nonetheless, the company posted a almost $45 million profit. The business was only down about 10 million on the quarter operationally, which is a very good sign, taking a look at how that actually shook out. So there were about $35 million in expenses that had to do with store closures. And the Canada operation as well counted for about 22 million in losses. So going forward, we're not going to have those 35 million in closures, or that number is going to come down. We also are not going to have 22 million on the books for the Canada loss. Canada is now off the loss. In fact, the sale of Canada should make up those losses that were incurred this past quarter. Should at least account for those. What this means is even if GameStop has, Q2, which, look, we know Q2 is not going to be the same as Q1 because we're going to have all of the Nintendo Switch stuff on the books, which is selling tremendously well. We may end up seeing the first of these sales with the Republic of Gamers' new Xbox handheld console. We can also anticipate, we're going to have some cash inflows from the sale of GME Canada. We are going to have Bitcoin appreciation. Bitcoin has been on a bit of a tear here. It's been looking very good. We're back close to all-time highs. Cooled off today, yesterday a little bit, but we can see it getting close to those back to all-time highs here. Seems like we've shown some pretty good respect of the 50-day moving average here. Momentum-wise, I think we are looking okay. We are pretty close to a couple bullish crosses once again of our PMO, of our daily PMO here. We can take a look at Bitcoin over on the weekly PMO. It is also looking decent. We did have a weekly cross just a little while ago, and we are fast coming up on an additional weekly cross here. So very interesting to see that hovering. Not exactly sure what will be taking place going forward, but we're in a very strong Bitcoin bull trend here. Possible we get another correction back down to the 80-something range. I don't know, maybe a few months. I don't know. I might not come back below 90 here. Give it maybe several months. We will see. So we have quite a bit to look forward to as far as what's coming up with Q2 earnings. What's very excellent, it seems to me, is that this goes ahead and takes some of these other bullish elements that we were thinking about, that we were concerned about, and we were excited about possibly coming onto the tape into the quarterly filings this quarter. All that seems to have been pushed now into quarter two. So I think quarter two is going to do really, really well. Now we know that information has to essentially come out then. We can anticipate not only that we'll be operationally profitable, it seems likely that by that point as well, we can anticipate some of GME's investments, and particularly through Bitcoin, will be doing just fine. I mean, I at minimum, if Ryan Cohen went ahead and did manage to purchase Bitcoin in the 90s, I have a difficult time anticipating that by the report in September, that Bitcoin, say, over the next, when does this quarter end? The quarter ends early July, I think. Early July. So, GameStop is May, June. Yeah, Q2 is May, June, July. So we will be, certainly quarter two is going to be very exciting there. But of course, the question that we are faced with is, all right, so we didn't get this stuff for this quarter. What does that mean now with our price action? What are we looking at kind of coming out of here? One thing that more or less stood out to me was, all right, some people, always you get these reports, okay, GameStop fumbled the whole Bitcoin thing because Ryan Cohen didn't manage to buy at 77,000. GameStop, the price always sells off after earnings. I have people say this to me. It always sells off after earnings, even though just last quarter it didn't sell off after earnings. And in Q3, it didn't sell off after earnings, which were both large EPS beats. We have an even larger, actually in the past 3 quarters, this is our largest EPS beat in terms of percentage. I think also and absolute value of profit. That might not be true. No, it was a 4 cents consensus in terms of percentage, in terms of percentage, and in terms of improvement year over year, certainly, but not versus Q4. I think Q4 that we had, it was pretty close. I'll say it's pretty close. I won't squint at that. Price action, very interesting, right? Of course, we did something very similar to what we did kind of coming out of Q3. Shot up to 31. Q3, we shot all the way down to 25.50 and then came back kind of in the 26s and then did some stuff in the 26s. Something similar here, except we did get this very large after hours candle that really curiously mapped out at several points throughout the day. Essentially the body of that candle back from March 26th that I just pointed out to you guys a little while ago, right? So basically throughout the day, trading stayed pretty stable on top of not the high. Was it in fact the high? Actually, I think it was. So we used the day's high as a support, as an intraday low. So the 326 high was our intraday low. Then after hours, the intraday low on the 26th was our double bottom here after hours. And then, right as extended hours open, we went right back to the intraday high. So very interesting that those price points remained pretty consistent between these moments here. This chart's a little outdated. We've actually already started to move pretty precipitously back up into the mid 29s. What I did find interesting in our options data, aside from our ETF data, which very curiously, right? I mean, somehow they are just not creating. They are just not creating, right? We got a little bit of creation, 200,000 shares of XRT. That does look like it was responsible for this very mild kind of VWAP price up from what, 30? We closed it around 29 and change, and we moved up to about 30.70 or so pre-market before then getting dumped right off the open. Very little. I suspect that move does look like that type of pattern that we're looking for creation, right? When we have FTD settlement orders come in, we do have orders come in the pre-market, right? We'll get creation orders coming in the pre-market, and that takes the form of a low volatility and low volume weighted average price order, a VWAP order. So did look like we got some of that, but again, only saw about 200,000 units of XRT were created. Seems to me like that may have been responsible for that type of move, but hard to say precisely. At the same time, we do see that GameStop shares available to borrow have increased, despite the fact that we did have some pretty strong deployment throughout the day yesterday. So we did go from 4 million all the way down to 3.3 million. So quite a bit of the outstanding shares to borrow were used in order to control the price. It looks yesterday into the after hours, right? Yet they've not only been refilled, but are now higher than they were. XRT shares to borrow also spent they spent the entire day at 0, and then a little bit of the pre-market period as well, basically up until about 6:30 a.m. when they refilled only gradually to about 75,000. So interesting there. GMEU is still very difficult to borrow. The borrow rate is still very high, and there are not that many units available. It does seem from our options landscape, too, what I did notice, taking a look in the immediate term, we do see that for strikes on both sides of the chain, both puts and calls were skewed towards the ask when they were out of the money, but skewed toward the bid at in the money or at the money. So an interesting turn of affairs. It does seem, though, right, like we have these concentrations here, 35, 33 on the call side, and then 24, 25 on the put side, 26 as well, skewed towards the ask, right? There were some decent-sized blocks, only a couple thousand contracts, not crazy volume, not crazy big orders, but traders did come in and open long volatility positions. So I don't know if these are sort of joint orders, if these are meant to sort of play volatility in one direction or the other, but these did come onto the tape yesterday. And what's interesting is with GME, when you're long volatility, you're also kind of default bullish, because unlike SPY, right? If you're SPY and you're long vol, you're bearish, right? For example, if you go back and you look at the River Runs Dry DD by Gherkin, he has a section called Gherkin's Law, that volatility and liquidity are inverse of one another. And therefore, if you are long shares of a stock, you are effectively short volatility. That law more or less holds true in the broader market indices, in the options market that has to do, right? So when you're talking about SPY or the Qs or something like that, that is true. When you are dealing with GameStop, however, the inverse is true. So when SPY moves down, we've talked about this before, obviously, right? When SPY moves down, volatility goes up. So if you are long volatility, you are essentially also bearish on the market. For GameStop, if you are long volatility, you are bullish, since GameStop's IV goes up as the price goes up. It does the inverse of SPY. So what's interesting about a deep out of the money put is that depending on how far out of the money this is, and this is really, as far as puts, right, this is like 20 something percent. It's like 25% out of the money to open 2,000 contracts at $24. Weirdly, that's kind of a bullish bet. It's either you have some advanced knowledge and are hyper bearish and think it's going to go down $6 in a day, right? If we get an offering today or something like that, it's going to go down $6 and these are going to be in the money and they'll print for you. Or it's essentially bullish in that if we go nuts to the upside right away, these contracts will also probably double or triple in value from the IV appreciation. So kind of a weird circumstance there, but it is interesting to see that that's not common, right? We don't typically see these puts go ahead and pile up down at 24 or 25. We do have for this week, interestingly, some puts did go ahead and accumulate there. I don't know, maybe somebody knows something that we don't know. Maybe maybe this is just preparation for a potential offering. We do have our net asset value floor somewhere around 26, depending on how you go ahead and value the Bitcoin. We should be somewhere around kind of upper 25s, lower 26s. Based on, what's interesting is the market is clearly pricing in the Bitcoin because the market knows the company has the Bitcoin. What is curious is that it still stays off of the actual quarterly report. So I don't know, maybe if they short it, they can get away without factoring in the Bitcoin. They can just treat that stuff as cash. Not sure. Very curious. So that's an interesting dynamic there. It does suggest that traders are still preparing for volatility, even though we're very wary. I'm certainly very wary of this post-earnings IV crush rate that we talked about yesterday. Definitely on short-term options, which I mean, these were really biased towards short-term options. So, gobby with whoever went ahead and opened up 2,000 contracts of $24 puts. Like, seriously, dog, good luck, man. At the ask, nonetheless. We are still really top-heavy on gamma distribution, on how we are doing in terms of market maker gamma exposure and positioning with respect to the options market. Max Payne is still at 29.50, but if we do get some volatility coming onto the tape, if we do get some traders closing short positions, institutions closing short positions, if it takes us kind of up here, the longer this happens, or I should say the later in the week this happens, the more difficult it's going to be in order to adjust the price downward. So it may be that something happens today, moves us into this bracket here, moves us into once again back into the 30-35 bracket. Perhaps there's some unwillingness to short the stock, especially if there's no forthcoming offer or something like that, convertible bond or at the market or preferred shares or something like that. Then if we move up into this area, it may prove difficult to adjust the price back down in order to keep all of this OI out of the money. But with that said, we do apparently have quite a lot of liquidity somehow. This was created somehow, possibly through the extent to which XRT has been very heavily redeemed. Maybe that ends up being used in order to adjust the price downward. So staying wary here. A lot of uncertainty. Things are looking great for the fundamentals of the company. It does look like, I mean, really having such a strong balance sheet at the end of the day does make it much harder to affect some of these really catastrophic events in terms of the bottom falling out of the price. If we do, however, I think I pointed this out over in the article too. You know, we don't really have that much downside. Maybe, right? I mean, I kind of got a little bit generous with the doodle over here. You know, maybe we look something like this, but I mean, if we move down immediately, we've got a couple speed bumps underneath us. We kind of got 2750 here at the 50-day moving average. And then if we look at where our 100 and 200-day moving averages are, that pretty much sandwiches, like depending on how you want to do the 2x net asset value floor estimation of the company, it's somewhere in here. So, I mean, that's not that far to go. I mean, it's about as much as this drop from the day prior to earnings from this floating candle here. But very curious. Like I said, I think I said this to a few folks earlier today. In times of uncertainty, right? As long as you're positioned smartly, right? The right thing to do in terms of how to learn the most and how to meet uncertainty is with a spirit of adventure. So I'm certainly meeting this with a spirit of adventure, a spirit to discover what we have on the horizon here for GameStop. Obviously, Ryan Cohen and company have the balance sheet pretty well in hand. And it's just a question of strategic positioning here to make the most out of what GameStop does. So, GameStop can help us make the most out of the lives we live out there in the real world. So very much looking forward to looking ahead, seeing potentially what the company. We have annual shareholder meeting coming up tomorrow. It's going to be a good. It's going to be a good time. I think. Also Larry Chang is doing a live stream on Friday. It is before ours, so you will have the chance to go ahead and see both. I know it's tough, right? Me and Larry. It's a tough decision. Larry, I think he's going live at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so middle of the trading day. Of course, we'll be at 4 p.m. And there you go. It's time for the market to open. So good luck out there. Good luck with your investments, your trades. And thanks for watching and listening. And we will catch you. We'll catch you next time. Thanks very much.